There is a haunting level of discipline that exists in this world, a caliber of consistency so absolute and unwavering that it actually makes other people look at you with a mixture of awe and genuine fear. And today you are going to discover the precise psychological and spiritual mechanics required to reach that terrifying state of being. You have undoubtedly seen that rare individual who seems to operate on a different frequency than the rest of humanity. The person who never fails, who wakes up every single day at the exact same second, performs the exact same rituals, and simply refuses to stop regardless of their emotional state or external circumstances. While the rest of the world gives up on their resolutions by the third week of January, this person is still going strong in December, and while everyone else is busy manufacturing elaborate excuses for their stagnation, this person simply shows up again and again until their very existence provokes whispers among their peers that something about them is not normal. This level of output is not an accident, nor is it a genetic gift, but rather the result of an ancient system created by Zen monks in Japan designed to produce exactly this kind of frightening consistency known as guji, which translates to the practice that perpetuates itself, a concept so powerful that once you understand its internal logic, you will never break a promise to yourself again. However, you must understand that this system comes with a heavy price and is not for the faint of heart, because it requires you to ruthlessly kill a part of yourself that you have coddled for years, specifically the part of you that loves comfort and negotiation. But before we dissect the anatomy of this transformation, if you are truly ready to abandon your old self, engage with this content to signal your commitment to the change that is coming. To understand the necessity of this system, we must look at the story of Raphael, a capable programmer who represented the archetype of modern frustration. He was intelligent, successful in his career, and seemingly functional. Yet he harbored a debilitating weakness in that he could not stick to any habit for more than 2 weeks, creating a graveyard of abandoned projects and half-started dreams. His pattern was a tragic comedy of errors where he would join a gym only to quit after 2 months, start meditation for a week before letting it slide, or buy a book only to read 3 pages before burying it in a drawer, trapped in a cycle where Monday brought a surge of aggressive motivation. Wednesday introduced the first whispers of mental negotiation, Friday resulted in complete surrender, and Sunday was spent making empty promises about how the next week would finally be different. Raphael tried every modern hack available, downloading habit tracking apps that he eventually ignored, setting up reward systems that he cheated on, and finding accountability partners who were just as undisciplined as he was, failing to realize that he was fighting a war against the very architecture of his own brain, using weapons that were too weak to pierce his subconscious resistance. He remained stuck in this purgatory of potential until the day he uncovered the truth behind why Zen monks can meditate for 800 years straight without missing a single day, realizing that their secret had nothing to do with the fleeting emotion of willpower and everything to do with a frighteningly deep restructuring of reality. The secret lies within the walls of Zen temples where a rule exists that appears deceptively simple but fundamentally alters the human relationship with time and action. Guji, or continuous practice without gaps, a philosophy which dictates that when a bell rings at 3:30 a.m. at the Ahai Temple, it is not a suggestion or a request, but an absolute commandment that has been obeyed every single day since the year 1200 AD. In this environment, the very concept of deciding to wake up does not exist, because no monk lies in bed debating whether they feel like getting up or thinking today, I will skip it, as the question itself has been erased from their cognitive landscape. This reveals the critical flaw in the modern mindset, which is that the average human brain categorizes commitments into 2 distinct boxes: reversible commitments, which become subject to endless mental negotiation based on feelings, and irreversible commitments, which simply happen regardless of how one feels. When a monk takes his vows in front of his entire community, he is not merely making a promise to try his best. He is fundamentally changing his identity, declaring himself a meditator in a way that makes failure an existential threat rather than a minor inconvenience. A Harvard University neuroscientist who spent 15 years studying habits confirmed that when you make a behavior public and tie it to your social standing, your primitive brain interprets failure as a threat to survival, because our ancestors who lost status in the tribe often died. meaning that to succeed, you must weaponize this evolutionary fear. Raphael applied this terrifying logic by stripping away the safety net of private promises and instead making a high-stakes public declaration that left him no room for retreat. He wrote out a binding contract stating, "I am a person who meditates 20 minutes every day at 5 a.m. for 90 consecutive days," signed it, posted it on every social media platform he had, and explicitly told everyone in his life about his undertaking. The reaction was immediate and predictable, with his girlfriend accusing him of being dramatic and his coworkers mocking him for trying too hard. Yet this skepticism was exactly what he needed, because every person who doubted him became fuel for his fire. Every morning when the seductive voice of laziness whispered that he should sleep in, he was jolted awake by the horrifying thought of having to look his peers in the face and admit that he was just another talker who couldn't deliver, transforming the pain of discipline into something far more bearable than the pain of public humiliation. On day 3, when the first real test arrived and his alarm screamed at 5 a.m., his mind began its usual routine of excuses about exhaustion and health. But the crushing weight of his public declaration silenced the negotiation because the social cost of quitting had finally become higher than the physical cost of continuing. Despite the external pressure keeping him in the game, Raphael soon found himself in the trenches of an internal war because while his reputation was at stake, his biology was still rebelling against this new imposition, screaming for sleep and comfort every time the alarm went off. He realized that the public declaration had successfully ended the mental negotiation of whether to do the task, but he was still fighting a bloody battle against his own physiology every morning, which led him to the monk's second principle, the concept of non-negotiable hours. He realized that most people waste a tremendous amount of mental glucose, the brain's primary fuel source, agonizing over when to perform a task, asking themselves if they should work out now or after breakfast, in the morning or at night, burning up the very energy they need for the task on the decision of scheduling it. Raphael chose 5 a.m. not because he enjoyed the morning or wanted to be part of a trendy club, but because at that hour the world was dead, devoid of text messages, emails, and distractions, allowing him to eliminate every possible external excuse before the day even began. The first week was absolute hell as his body fought the new pattern with every fiber of its being. But by the second week, a shift occurred where he began waking up 2 minutes before the alarm, proving that his body was submitting to the new reality. By day 14, his feet hit the floor before his conscious mind even booted up, turning the act from a decision into a reflex. However, as the timing became automatic, Raphael stumbled into a new trap where he kept the schedule fixed but constantly varied the activity itself, sometimes meditating, sometimes reading, and sometimes doing push-ups, inadvertently giving his brain a new foothold for negotiation. He had successfully eliminated the question of when, but his mind immediately pivoted to arguing about what, creating chaos within the structure because his brain was forced to make micro-decisions every single morning about the intensity and nature of the task. This is where the controversial teaching of Dogen regarding forms becomes essential, as it dictates that you must do exactly the same thing every single day until the mind completely surrenders, because variety, contrary to popular belief, is often where consistency goes to die. Every time you change your routine, you introduce a decision point, and every decision point is a crack in your armor where your old, lazy patterns can leak back in. Raphael realized he had to lock everything down with robotic precision. 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of reading, performed in the same order with the same timer, forcing his life into a period of ango, or strict practice. His friends called him robotic and his girlfriend found it annoying, but they failed to understand that becoming boring was the entire point, as it silenced the internal noise. In the third week of this robotic repetition, his mind screamed for variety, begging him to mix things up to avoid burnout. But he pushed through until the fourth week, when something inside him broke, not his discipline, but his resistance. The voice of negotiation grew eerily quiet, and by week 6, he would often find himself halfway through his push-ups before he even realized he had started, indicating that the practice was now taking care of itself. This illustrates the profound truth that consistency is not about sustaining willpower forever, but about repeating a behavior until willpower is no longer required. A phenomenon explained by MIT researchers who found that after approximately 66 days of repetition in the same context, the basal ganglia of the brain takes over and the behavior becomes automatic. Raphael was no longer deciding to do the work. He was simply witnessing his body do the work, moving through the sequence with the fluidity of a dancer who has memorized the choreography so deeply that the steps flow without conscious thought. He had successfully transitioned from a man fighting his nature to a machine executing a program, and in doing so, he accessed a level of ease that the undisciplined can never understand. The true test of this system arrived when the perfect conditions collapsed. On day 35, he caught the flu, and on day 40, he had to travel for work, scenarios that previously would have served as valid exit ramps for his habits. This is the critical juncture where the all-or-nothing mentality usually destroys progress, where people convince themselves that if they cannot do the perfect 20-minute workout, they should do nothing at all, creating gaps where the old self creeps back in. Dogen's philosophy of Guji emphasizes that practice must continue without even a momentary gap, because a river that stops flowing during a drought is no longer a river. It is merely a memory of water. Similarly, the moment you skip a day because you are too busy, you are no longer a practitioner. You are someone who used to practice. Raphael understood that while he couldn't control the quality of the session during these chaotic days, he had to control the continuity, realizing that a rest day is a strategic pause for growth, whereas skipping due to fatigue is a retreat. So, on day 40, amidst the chaos of a 4 a.m. flight and meetings, he did push-ups in the airport bathroom while strangers looked at him like he was insane, meditated in the back of an Uber, and read on the plane, proving that the goal wasn't perfection, but the maintenance of momentum. Raphael survived these disruptions because he had employed the strategy of pre-solutions, realizing that unexpected obstacles like a sick child, a broken car, or a demanding boss are the true killers of consistency, because they force you to make decisions under stress. When chaos strikes, the brain naturally seeks the path of least resistance, which is why Zen monasteries have survived earthquakes and wars without missing a day of practice. They don't hold meetings to decide what to do when disaster strikes. The answer already exists. Raphael sat down and wrote a specific protocol for every possible consistency killer. If it rains, I do push-ups in the garage. If I have guests, I do a silent workout in the bathroom. If I am hungover, I do the bare minimum of 2 push-ups and 1 minute of meditation. By pre-deciding his response to every scenario, he removed decision fatigue from the critical moment, preserving his prefrontal cortex for execution rather than deliberation. This pre-programming meant that when his girlfriend's mother visited and the house was full, he didn't have to think. He simply executed the bathroom protocol, moving through life with the certainty of a man who has already solved problems that haven't even happened yet. By day 90, Raphael had completed his personal Ango, achieving 3 months of uninterrupted practice. But the man who emerged from that tunnel was not the same man who entered it. His friends told him his consistency was scary, and they were right to be afraid, because his existence had become a mirror reflecting their own lack of discipline, proving that what they called impossible was merely uncomfortable. He realized that the Guji system does not just create habits. It facilitates a death and rebirth, killing the inconsistent, negotiating version of the self, and birthing an unbreakable entity that operates beyond the reach of moods or motivation. When you implement the public declaration, the fixed schedule, the seamless practice, and the pre-resolved answers, you stop being someone who tries to do things and become someone who simply is that thing. The ultimate question is whether you are ready for this transformation, because true discipline will alienate you from the mediocre majority and make people whisper that you are not normal. But when you hear those words, you will smile, knowing that being normal was never the goal, and that the only consistency worth having is the kind that scares the world.